Right at the very heart of Buddhism, there's this framework. It's so simple, but it's also incredibly profound. And the thing is, if you can really get your head around it, everything else just kind of clicks into place. We're talking about the Four Noble Truths. Think of it as a practical owner's manual for your own mind. You see, the Buddha was, well, incredibly pragmatic. He wasn't really interested in these big metaphysical ideas you just had to believe in. Nope. His entire focus was on solving a very real, very universal human problem. He made it super clear. His whole teaching was about one thing and one thing only, understanding our unease and finding a way to end it. Okay, so what's so cool about this is how it's all structured. The best way to think about it is like this. Imagine the Buddha as a kind of doctor for the human condition. The Four Noble Truths follow this perfect medical model. First, the doctor diagnoses the illness, right? Then, they figure out what's causing it. Third, they give you the prognosis, the good news that a cure is actually possible. And finally, they write the prescription, the path to get you well again. See? It's clear, it's logical, and honestly, it's pretty empowering. So, that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to follow that same four-step model. We'll kick things off with the diagnosis, really understanding what this suffering or unease is all about. Then we'll dig into the cause. After that, we get to the good news, the cure, and we'll wrap it all up with prescription, the practical steps you can take, and a final thought on how we can all cultivate this freedom for ourselves. All right, let's dive right in. Step 1, the diagnosis. This is the first noble truth, and it's all about getting a really clear, honest look at the problem. And right off the bat, we've got to clear up a massive misunderstanding. You've probably heard the first truth translated as, life is suffering. I mean, that sounds so pessimistic, right? But that's not actually what it says. The real distinction here is crucial. The Buddhist said there is suffering. This isn't some final judgment on life itself. It's just a simple, honest observation that, yeah, suffering happens. It's a problem we can solve, not some permanent sentence. The original Pali word for this is dukkha. And let's face it, suffering is a huge, heavy word. A much better way to think about it might be unease. Or, and I love this image, think of a wheel that's just a little bit out of kilter. It's not broken, but it makes for a bumpy, unsatisfying ride. So it's not always about some big tragedy. It can just be that low-level hum of dissatisfaction, that feeling that things aren't quite right, which I think we all know. So the big question is, what do we do about this unease? Our gut instinct is to run, right? Distract ourselves, ignore it. But the practice here is totally counterintuitive. The first step isn't to escape. It's to actually turn towards the dukkha, to get to know it, to investigate it. It's just like a doctor who has to really study an illness to figure out how to cure it. We have to understand our own unease before we can resolve it. And this brings us to one of the most powerful analogies for understanding dukkha. Think of it like this. Life is inevitably going to shoot a first arrow at you. That could be physical pain, loss, disappointment, whatever. That part's unavoidable. But then, what do we usually do? We shoot a second arrow right at ourselves. That second arrow is our reaction. It's the anger, the blame, the self-pity that we pile on top of the original pain. That second arrow, the suffering we add ourselves, is what this whole teaching is designed to help us with. Okay, so that second arrow, that's our real target. It's the optional, reactive suffering we add to life's unavoidable pain. And this leads us straight to step 2. If we're the ones shooting that arrow, then what's the bow that's launching it? What's the root cause of that reaction? Well, the second noble truth is all about identifying that source. The cause is pinpointed with a single really powerful word, taṇhā. And what it literally means is thirst. It's that relentless craving, that inner compulsion, that feeling of, I need this, or I've got to get away from that. It's the drive of the mind that is just never quite satisfied, always thirsty for something more or something different. And this is a really key detail. This taṇhā, this thirst, it leads to something called upadana, which means clinging. So you see, it's not the things or the people or the experiences themselves that they're the problem. It's our clinging to them. It's that desperate, white-knuckled grasp on the pleasant stuff and that forceful pushing away of the unpleasant. That act of clinging, that's the fuel for the fire. The ancient texts are crystal clear. If you cling, you are guaranteed to suffer, period. The poet William Blake nailed this idea centuries later. He said, when you try to bind joy to yourself, to hold on to it, you destroy the life in it. But if you can just experience it fully as it's happening, kiss the joy as it flies, that's where you find a kind of freedom. It just beautifully shows the difference between actually experiencing pleasure and then creating suffering by trying to lock it down and make it permanent. So how do we actually spot this clinging in ourselves? Well, we can't just look outside. The cause of our suffering isn't out there somewhere. It's right in here. And this takes some real, courageous introspection, a willingness to look inward and see our own patterns of craving and pushing away. And this brings us to a super direct and really powerful question we can start asking ourselves. In any tough situation, we can just pause and ask, what is my contribution to this suffering? Even if 90% of the problem is totally external, focusing on our 10%, our own clinging, our own reaction, that's where all our power is. That's where we find our path to freedom. Okay, so let's recap. We've diagnosed the problem as unease, and we've identified the cause as clinging. Now we get to the really hopeful part, the turning point. The third noble truth is the prognosis. A cure is not just possible, it's a given if you follow the steps. Honestly, this is the good news of the entire teaching. It's this simple, radical, and totally liberating promise that this unease, this dukkha, can actually end. Freedom from suffering isn't some pie-in-the-sky fantasy. It's a real, achievable possibility. The word for this is nirodha, and it means cessation, or just an ending. The ultimate goal, nibbana, isn't described as gaining some new blissful state. It's described as the complete fading away of that thirst, that craving we talked about earlier. So the cure isn't about getting something new. It's about letting go of the thing that was causing the problem in the first place. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine you have a small bell, and you're holding it in a tight fist. If you try to ring it, you just get this dull thud, right? The grasping just smothers it. But what happens if you rest that same bell on an open, relaxed palm? It rings out beautifully, clearly. Our minds are just like that. When we stop clinging, our natural state of ease and clarity and openness is just revealed. It was there all along. All right, so we've got the diagnosis, we've got the cause, and we've got the amazing news that a cure exists. The final piece of the puzzle is the prescription. How exactly do we do this? Well, that's the fourth noble truth. This is the practical, step-by-step path to that freedom. And let's be real for a second. Letting go of our deepest habits, our most ingrained patterns of clinging, it's not easy. If it were, we'd all just do it, right? And that's exactly why we need a path, a kind of training. The fourth truth gives us the how-to. It's the set of conditions we can put in place to allow this deep transformation to happen all on its own. And this prescription is called the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a complete training for our mind and our heart. It starts with wisdom, things like right view, which is really just getting our heads around these four noble truths, and right intention, which is our commitment to this path. Then you have ethical conduct, right speech, right action, right livelihood. These create a calm, settled heart, which you absolutely need for this deep release. And finally, you've got the mental training, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are the practices that train the mind to see things as they really are. Put them all together and you create the perfect fertile ground where clinging can just stop and real wisdom can grow. But this is so important. It's not a rigid checklist of external rules you have to follow. While it is a prescription to set the right conditions, in a much deeper sense, the path isn't just the road to the destination. It's an expression of the destination itself. It's what a person naturally becomes when that non-clinging is realized. We don't just find a path and then walk on it. We literally create the path with every step we take. All right, let's pull all four of these truths together. From the diagnosis, to the cause, to the cure, to the prescription. What's the big takeaway here? Maybe the best way to see it is through a really simple but powerful metaphor. The key idea, the big shift in perspective, is this. We are not trying to import something new from the outside. We're not trying to bolt on some new belief or find some magic state. We're not broken machines that need a new part. No. This entire process is about nurturing something that is already right here, inside of us. And this, I think, is just the most beautiful summary of the whole practice. We all have a capacity for peace, a seed of ease already inside of us. Now, it might be a tiny little seed, and it might be buried under a whole lot of weeds, habits, conditioning, but it's there. The entire path, all four of these noble truths, is simply about learning how to create the right conditions. It's about learning how to nourish and water that little seed so it can naturally grow and blossom. So when you boil it all down, The practice really just comes down to this choice, moment by moment. The Four Noble Truths give us the map and the gardening tools, so to speak, but we're the ones who have to do the gardening. And so the question it leaves us with is a really personal one. In your own life, in your own mind, what seeds will you choose to water? The seeds of habit, of clinging and reactivity, or the seeds of peace, of letting go and of ease?